Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, this is the new way. And we will take everything we knew and weigh it again to see if we can maybe do it better in the future. I'm here with Madness. We had a discussion about a year ago, which is still posted on YouTube. And this will be a follow up with some of the stuff that we've been doing in the interim. So, Madness, Mike, you're welcome to come back on. And why don't you explain a little bit about the process of The Start is Near?
So the start is near was a podcast that I kind of incubated with Jamin Shively and Marco, a beautiful wizard out there. And we tackle many topics. Uh, our primary focus is both elucidating how to take the wheel on the world and how we actually can be efficacious in terms of world change, and then bringing together teams of teams. And I won't wax too long on that, Doc, but I think that's enough of a preamble for a moment. I will send links out on our chat for anyone who wants to follow up on them, but that's where we're getting to is Doc has watched the first 15 episodes and participated in many of them. And I don't know. We'll get there, Doc, but keep going.
Episode 15 went live yesterday. It has been every Friday since what, early December? That
Something like that.
small
Yeah.
group has been meeting.
About then,
And
yeah.
yeah, and all the videos are posted on YouTube. And Jamin each week sends out information to invite people to the broadcast and links every one of those past episodes. And so, as a scientist wishing to see if the numbers of the Fibonacci series could be used to predict growth in an emerging group, I started watching all the episodes from episode one after I had already been acquainted with the process and had joined the process in episode 10. And so I finished my calculations and have looked at the first 15 episodes as a whole and have some interesting quantitative measurements. The qualitative measurements are not here and cannot be done by this method. All it is accounting for the number of people in a group and then applying it to the Fibonacci scale. The Fibonacci scale is something that we can use to measure some items in nature. And you take the first number 0, the second number 1, add them together to generate the next number 1. Then you take the previous number 1, add it to the current number 1, and that generates the next number 2. 1 and 2 is 3,
May I raise
2
my
and
hand when you're
3
ready,
is
Doc?
5. Go ahead.
Well, I just for the posterity for the recording. So we are talking about group theory essentially, and we're using the start is near as a kind of a historical record or an example or an exemplar for these conversations. And again, this is for posterity, so I know we're rehashing some stuff, but you've been working on the scaling of sociochemical Fibonacci groups for quite a bit, because I know we're rehashing this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The group theory is part of chemistry, and it's an area where it involves mathematical matrices in order to produce uh, the probable locations of atoms in space in a molecule. And it fits very well in chemistry, which is between biology and physics in the continuum of life. Sociology is about the same place as chemistry is in the continuum of humanities. And so you've got psychology on par with biology, and you've got economics on par with physics. And in the middle, you've got sociology and chemistry. So the mathematics of chemistry should fit into the mathematics of sociology in a way that maybe we can use the principles to get out of the current doldrums and do something completely different that is somewhat nature based.
I hesitate to bring up Foundation or Harry Sheldon, Doc, but you understand what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The Foundation set of books by Isaac Asimov is really a basis set for some of the work that we're doing now. And it's funny that we're using the Foundation series because it seems like Asimov is more important in the world right now for the robot series and all that's going on
Yeah,
with AI.
yeah, yeah.
But that's another discussion for another time.
Okay, so to keep us on the ball here, you've been participating in the Starters Near podcast, and you've been taking these metrics, which I think is very important. And what I would like to do with us today is elucidate this for posterity. How about you start at the beginning?
Okay. Episode 1, The Beginning. There were 7 people in the first episode of The Start Is Near, which includes Mike here and Jamin, and also Marco, Victor, Gavin, James, and Brett. And for the first 3 episodes of The Start of Near, these 7 gentlemen had discussions over basically where things were going in a way that they could promote a group consciousness, which is now known as CHISY, human collective superintelligence.
Collective human intelligence and then collective human superintelligence, but yes.
Okay. At the first 3 episodes, with just the in the first 3 episodes, with 7 people there, the first episode, each person counted as 1. So there were 7 people total and 7 points earned by the episode.
Do you want to articulate why that number matters just for posterity, Doc?
Well, it's the first group, first order coming together, which is each individual as a group of 1, establishing a rapport with other people in that group of 1. So if you count Fibonacci sequence up to 7, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. 7 isn't quite at 8, so we group it into 5. And at 5, it is in the 5th category of numbers. 1,
Right,
1, 2,
right.
3,
Yeah.
5. So we've got first order, 5th level episode of that group. Now, the theory that I have approached here in looking at this group is it's an incubated second order group. And to have a second order group, what I like to do is start at 5, so that 5 maps to the first one, 8 maps to the second one, 13 maps to the 2, and take whatever amount of people are in the group and use that mapping strategy so that the group is a second order group and the level, 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, is the first level. When you get to 8 people, it goes to the second level. And since we're dealing with humans and you can't subdivide a human into anything that keeps it human, 1 human is 1 quanta, cannot be subdivided, and the error in our measurement is plus or minus 1 human.
We talked about, well, maybe it wasn't you and I, but units of communication. I think it was Yasuhiko and Mark, but we'll get to there as well. But yeah, the quanta, Keep going.
Okay. At episode 7, or no, episode 4, well, let's go through some counting on those first 3
Yep.
episodes.
Yep. Take your time.
First episode, 7 people, first time in the room, 7 total. Second episode, 7 people in the room, second time in the room, nobody knew. So 14 is the total value of the episode in sum, because each player is worth 2 now. 21 is the total count for the start is near, and 7 is the amount of people that were in the room. Third episode, same 7 people, now each worth 3, means that the total for the episode is 21. The sum is 21 plus 21, or 42. And now we're at the end of episode 3 with a total value of 42 and 3 episodes in the can. Each episode is roughly 2 hours. And the idea is to look at the group growth. Welcome to Dawn. And yes, live energy force field animates everything. And what we're doing is we're applying life studies Fibonacci to a living group activity, a chat on YouTube. Well, actually, the chat's on Zoom. It's only shown back on YouTube. And talking about, well, let me continue talking. Now we're at episode 4. The count of people at episode 4 was 7, but one of the originals had dropped out and was replaced by Ben. So the sum is 4 times 6 plus 1, or 25. The total is 67. And again, the group count is 7. This is a second level first order group by being 5 people. But if it was a first order group, it would still be a 5th level first order group. And in fact, you can measure the group in both ways. It's 5th level on the first order, first level on the second order. And depending on what the group focus is, it can operate on either order. Because when bringing new people in, it's a first order group for the new people, because everybody has to start at first level, first order the first time you come in.
I will raise my hand on that, but we'll get there. But keep going.
No, we're there.
Okay.
Ask your question.
Well, I just wanted to ask you if you can articulate that again for the recording. But what
Okay.
changes with each individual when they start moving through the levels?
When they start moving through the levels, all it is it's an accumulation of how many appearances they've made on the broadcast. It's not a ranking of people. It's only a test of their presence and absence, really. Uh-oh. I seem to have lost Mike. That's an interesting thing. I'm sure he will be back. I'm not sure what has happened, but we know we do have a lot of things going on. Yeah, what we're trying to do is actually look at science objectively without assuming that science is correct or incorrect. And I'm using Fibonacci as only a mathematical overlay and not really trying to make any predictive behavior based on this. All we're doing is looking at the count of how many people show up, the sum of that count for the individual episode, the sum of the count for the total episodes and the order that things come into. So Don welcomes you back, Mike, and say something because I can
No,
see you.
we're good. You knocked it out of the park, Doc, and I came in and out in flow. So yeah, no, you're good. Keep going.
Okay, episode 4 with Ben as a first timer substituting for somebody who had been there previous times. The group count came out to 25, 4 times 6 plus 1, 67 on the total for the episodes, and again, 7 people there. The 5th episode dropped to 4 people, all of whom had been in the original group. So 4 times 5 is 20. That's the score on the episode. Adding it to the sum total makes it up to 87. And because there are 4 people there, the first order group has dropped now to the 4th level, first order, 4th level, but the second order group at the first level is still there at the first level because 4 is within plus or minus 1 of 5.
Right.
And so the 6th episode had 5 consistent regulars, we'll call them, and Jacob as the 6th party.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That made the sum total up to 30, and the all episodes total up to 117. And now through 6 episodes, we're still on that original second order first level that I'm doing the measurements to see how it grows, while the first order is back up to a 5th level as opposed to 4th because we exceeded the threshold of 5. 7th episode was a big episode, and 4 new people joined the episode, so that the total number of people in episode 7 of the start of Near was 9 people. This kicked the second order group up to second level. So it's a growth marker on our Fibonacci curve. And it took, 7 episodes
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
grow 1 level within the second order. That would be like taking your personal group of 1 on first order and realizing you're part of humanity, which is the second level of the first order. Still you alone, but now you alone as a representative of all humans, as opposed to you as one human, which are the 2 ones in Fibonacci as applied to sociology.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that, Doc. 'Cause it bears elucidating, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So that 7th episode, the sum of the participants for the episode was 33. That's taking 7 for each person who's been there all along. But for people who missed an episode, like 5 or 6, and come back, they just get a +1 incrementation.
Right.
And
Right.
all we're doing is counting the number of people. There's 150 points now by adding 33 to the 117.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so points for the individual episode have risen every episode except for the 5th episode where we only had 4 people. Otherwise, there was constant growth in that value of the people in the room based on attendance. And that is slowly accumulating so that the whole start is near value 117 or 150 now
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
7th level can be applied against other groups that we measure in the future because every group that builds
Yeah.
initially on a second level can compare itself using this system to any other group. And this is only a system of measurement, and all I've been doing is tracking it. I didn't invent it. It was invented long ago. You can look at works of art like Michelangelo and Da Vinci and see that they understood this golden mean ratio based on the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not a do all end all, it's just another way of looking at it.
And I want to reiterate too. We will take all the wheels. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
And in fact, other people can measure these things, the same episodes, differently. And we can compare the different measurements and see how they stack up because we know they're all measuring the same thing. They're going to be equal. And in going over my math, I did find that I had made a couple of errors in assigning people who made appearances
Doc.
lower numbers than I had noticed. But at the end, I had 37 people in one group and 36 people in another group. And
Yeah.
I had to track down that missing person because it's the same group and there are 37 people. What had
No,
happened was,
heard. I know. I'm laughing for my future self. But go ahead, Doc.
yeah,
Sorry.
I just, it all works, but you do have to be careful when you're using math to get the checks in place.
Well, we're coming up on episode 8 now too, as well, right? So we're getting into the real
Yes.
thick of it. Yes. Yeah.
By episode 8, there were 5 people in episode 8, but 2 of those players were new. And that was Jack and Stanley. That was the one you brought Stanley in
Yep.
on.
Yep.
And it was a very deep conversation that was a little different from the others. And its value only turned up to be 25 because Jack and Stanley were ones and the other threes were eights. And no, there was a 6. I think Jacob or Ben, I think
No,
Jacob.
understood. And so again, for just elucidation purposes, you actually hit it right on the head there. So 1, 6, and 8. Why those metrics? Just for the future.
1, 6, and 8.
You were assigning the metric, not assigning, but you were observing the metrics for the individuals in that episode 8.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jack and Stanley being first time people were ones.
Yeah.
2 people who were there, Jamin and Marco, at that point were eights. So 16, 17, 18. That means there was a 7. So
Which was
part
probably
of me
me.
is a
I
7.
think it might have been me. Yeah.
It might have been you because you
Yeah.
had missed one of the previous episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where that 25 comes in for the value. And that added up to 175 total after 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
I'm with you,
ninth,
Doc. Keep going.
the ninth episode grew back up to 8. And as with any growth, it's always accordion. Grow up a little, take a little slip back, grow up more, take a little slip back. You never maintain and you never
You
go
humble me,
grow and
Doc. You
grow and
humble
grow
me.
and grow and grow.
It's not
So,
sustainable, right? But yeah, you humble me.
yes, Don, it's interesting. The Solfeggio order does work under the same way as this all does. But it's because taking the Fibonacci and applying it in this form is just applying it. It's not creating something new. It's just counting. And that's
Practical
why
application, right, Doc?
that's why I called it Fibonacci Accounting previously in a video that was made. And the 10-minute conversation with Doc is a more concise form of that Fibonacci accounting video where we've taken out some of the side conversations to just make it something right tuned to the point, which somebody might do with this episode, although it's going to be an hour in, and taking a whole hour and
Mm.
crushing it down to half an hour or 45 minutes is a piece of work for somebody who needs the experience of doing that work. And in fact, that's why I started this project, is because I needed to work through the Fibonacci in doing this to demonstrate to myself that the measurement system is, in fact, measuring growth in a fundamentally natural way. Yes, all
No,
roads.
and you are a scholar, Doc, a gentleman and a scholar.
So you say.
Well, that's one man's opinion, but yeah, carry
Okay.
on, sir. We're on episode 9, I think.
Episode 9 had 2 new players, Yuki and Peter, coming in.
Yep, yep.
And it was an episode of 8 people. So we got back from second order first level to second order second level, which in the scheme of a curve is just a slight dip,
Sure,
but
yeah.
over the long haul might be significant, because we might be able to look at where we took steps backwards and analyze why the step was taken backwards and how it helped us move forwards later on, because each of these episodes are connected to the previous episode, but unique and first time episode all in their own right. And
Right.
so while
Yeah.
some of the themes come up over and over, each episode has new themes, new people in the game, and something for the hive mind to consider, because when we grow up to third and fourth order, we're going to have to represent each other in these groups. We can't have a group
Yeah.
of 50
Yeah.
people talking to each other. So one person from the start is near might be considered a lead, who can choose 4 other people to join a conversation. And then those 5 go into a conversation with 5 to 8 other people. And you have a group of 13 all of a sudden. But the start is near group is represented by a portion group who are going to talk for all the people who are not invited, and need to then go back and talk to the people who are not invited and make sure they're all bought in and you didn't get too far out on the limb. And if you did and you catch flack, bring that person to the next meeting and let
Right.
them
Right.
talk to the group, because it's more important that we get things right than we get things done in this particular instance. Now, as I see what has developed in the start of near, it is more important that we get things done than we get things right, because there's an impetus to the time variable there. And so, what I'm doing is not part of the start is near, but is inclusive of the start is near.
Yeah, Don's got a great comment there if you want to read that, Doc.
Dawn has some great comments here, and I could almost invite her in to our talk, but I learned from talking with Mark and Bruce last week that if you add a person to a conversation that's specifically directed, it changes its direction.
Well, maybe at the end of the hour or whatever, but we're on episode 9, working towards now episode 10 through yeah, you've got it.
Okay. Episode 9, the score for the episode was 39. The total now is 214. If you notice that total is slowly approaching the next Fibonacci number of 233,
I was gonna call you on that, but yes, understood, Doc.
and it'll come in later, that will measure the group based on those sums, and that all Fibonacci measurements are not created equal. They're created equal on the scale that you start using, and that if you shift, it might require mapping scale, or it might be that you're just measuring a different category, and we could call it the Fibonacci score in that category.
I would like that.
In responding to Don, yes, it is how it's fated to work because it's not changing anything. All we're doing is we're seeing that we can apply this on the same timeline that nature uses. And I say that Fibonacci is a timeline because the concept of time is badly busted. And we could look at the aggregate time of how much this group spends in meeting, but we can also approximate it by just taking 2 hours and multiplying it by the
Right.
episode
Yeah.
number.
Yep.
Yes, we trust the Force. And I guess I'll have to come up in my Obi-Wan costume at some time and
Yes.
do an
Yes, sir.
episode with Obi-Wan.
Well, between you, Sienna, and Jamin, we have Darth Vegan, Princess Leia, and then you, Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I want to know who's going to be Chewbacca.
Oh, maybe that's my rule. I don't have a good. I'll work on my Chewbacca voice.
Yeah, you're not hairy enough, though.
You're absolutely correct, Doc. Okay. Episode
Episode
11
10?
or 10. Yeah, sorry.
Episode 10 exploded with 6 new people in the room. It was the first time I had made it to the room. I was invited for episode 9 but couldn't make it due to scheduling. So I popped in at level 10. So did Lena for the first time, and Michael Gaio, and
Yeah.
3 other
Yeah.
people.
Cam. Yeah. No, keep going. Yeah.
And so the 12 people at episode made a 49 score, which was significantly higher than any previous score, summed up to 233 as a total. And if I remember correctly, that was a really good conversation. And when I went back and watched the episode again, I saw that somebody had done a little editing in it to make it a little cleaner. Because I
That
had
might have
some,
been Victor, but I don't know. Yeah, that might have been Victor.
yeah, or maybe I misremembered things a little. Because when you're in a position where you're talking in a group, your memory of what goes on and what was actually said are not necessarily the same things. I know when I'm asked to take notes, I'm really good at taking the essence of what different people say and putting it in my notes, except that I don't take notes on what I say at all. And as you
Which
know, I can
we had
talk
talked
quite a
about.
bit.
Yeah, we had. Yeah, for the future, and I want to bring up Mark as well and ever living meetings, but we're gonna need more than one note taker because you. It's difficult to be present and cognizant and taking notes all at once, right?
It's almost impossible, but one of the things that I had thought about way earlier in different iterations was the idea of having a person seated into the room whose only role is scribe, and they're not really taking part in the production. Their number wouldn't count to anything but an extra human presence.
Right, right,
But what it does is it allows somebody to take responsibility for the notes that doesn't have responsibility to the topic. And in a way, I see that a group of scribes whose whole role was just to
right,
follow this
right.
all and catalog and not be part of what's going on could just be another group in the system, so that when it builds up, you always want to make sure that a scribe is included for their perspective and point of view.
Yep, understood. Taking notes. Keep going, Doc. You've got this.
And John's taking notes on the energy and the frequency And it's real important that we tease out this concept of frequency with the concept of time, because our concept of frequency currently involves a measurement of time in the measurement of frequency. And I think frequency is time independent. In fact, I think frequency can change time and how it's manifest. But that, again, is a conversation for another time. As we
11.
move up
Or
to
sorry, go
11,
ahead. Yeah.
as we move up to 11 came in with a score of 50 compared to 10 with a score of 49, which makes it approximately equivalent on the score. Oh, yes, I watched that Dan Winter video that you sent, and it was very interesting. There's 20 people in that conversation, and I'm sure there are more people that weren't on view. And so we're not the only ones with the start is near doing things. Dan Winter's group is doing it, and other people are doing it. And that is very, very good, because people everywhere need
Doc,
to take.
I would be kind of ashamed if we were the first ones, but yes, understood.
Well, there's a lot of people who will claim to be the first ones. Anyway, in episode 11, we introduced three very real key people, Sienna, Hope, and Melissa. And those three women changed the flow of the conversation immensely, because previously most of the conversation had been male centric, and we don't live in a male centric world. And stepping back for a second, there are lots of questions about gender right now going on, and I do not mean to point this out in relation to the gender question. Gender is one of the Hermetic principles. I think it's the sixth one.
I have
And
the glass bead game right beside me, Doc Time, but keep going.
it is definitely worth having conversations, as Marx says, on the 200 different conflicts that Hegel has arisen. Uh, we're going to get into questioning everything in every field, but at the moment, we'll just take the assumption of everybody's right in their own mind. But when we bring it out to other people, we're not necessarily right. And if we insist that we are, we become legends in our own minds. And that's not the way it works. No matter where we are on the intelligence scale and the education scale and the connectivity scale, we're each an individual person, and we have to be consulted in what's going on, especially when we're affected as an individual, which all humanity is doing right now, affecting individuals in really
Mhm.
insane ways. And we're just trying to bring together what we can. Oh, cool. We're going to get a showstopper. let's go on to episode 12. We like that. Episode 12 had no new people at it, but it had 11 people, which is quite a good group. It still qualifies as a group of 8, because we haven't gotten up to the 13 to kick it up to the next level. So we're in order 2, but we're closing in on that next
If I
level.
may, Doc, why is that why is that threshold important?
Because once you go up to a higher threshold, there is a fundamental change in the dynamics of the system. And as you add more and more people to the group dynamics, you reach a point where an individual has to start dominating the conversation, or 2 or 3 individuals, and it changes the flow of what's happening. It will be interesting to see what happens when Mark gets to this level. But all of Mark's work right now is first order, whereas this is my first attempt to get in at the start of a second order group that has manifest from virtually nothing in the first order. It's actually 5 individuals who are comfortable enough to get things started at the next level. And we had 7, but again, that didn't get to 8, so 7 is part of 5. Okay, episode 11 scored 63 with all those experienced people at it. And that brought our total up to 376.
Yes.
Which is plus or minus 1 to 377, which is a Fibonacci number. So we're on that very cusp of jumping another level there. Episode 12 brought in 3 more new people with a 12-person total, but it doesn't get up to 13, so it hasn't changed the level within the order yet. Yeah, medicine people have more knowledge because of their expertise of what they dive into, and everybody has the potential to get expertise in an area that they're interested in. And I figure eventually the AI is going to help us to sort groups that are capable of having very, very good conversations. And these levels will fluctuate, but eventually we're going to need to be able to talk about how to change the world in a process that works. Because what we have now, as far as this world goes, is not acceptable.
The dude does not abide. You
So
got me, dog.
we're at episode 12, and we're at 376 total after adding 63
Yeah.
from the participation of the group members. And now we're buying in from all sorts of people who have made their first appearance, know what's going on, and can function at the second order instead of the first order, so that we're looking at meaningfully pulling off after parties with Chizzy
Right.
based on the global warming. And that's the focus that the group has taken, but it's not really the individual focus of anyone who originally came into the group, with the exception of maybe you and Jamin, who started the group to
Well,
get here.
just for the record, you know that anyone who talks to me longer than 5 minutes knows that my education is learning to learn, and it's kind of my thing. Or Samuel and I actually were talking about this morning, Doc. But we'll check in on that later. But he discovered metacognition yesterday. Yeah. Anyways, carry on.
Okay. Episode 13 brought in 3 new people, Sama, Alan, and Mark for the first time, and had a total of 12, a sum of 64. So, no, a sum of 66. That was one where I had to correct because I had
Yep.
Jacob is a first timer, and when I went back, he had 2 previous visits. So he needed to be kicked from 1 to 3, and that's where my numbers started correcting. But we're just one short of that 13 threshold to kick it up to the next level. But you can tell we're going to blow through that in episode 14.
Right.
And in fact, we did. In episode 14, 2 new people added to 12 old people for a total sum of 72 points of value for the recurring visits to the room. And we're up to 514 total. No, we're up to 442 total with a 66 on 13. On 14, we added two more people, and that got us over the threshold of 13. So it's interesting. We're first order starting off so that by the end of the first episode, we got to second order level 1. The end of the seventh episode, we're at level 2. The 14th episode, we're
Yeah,
at
take
level
your time
3.
to elucidate this too, Doc. We have a couple minutes, but take your time to elucidate that.
The idea is that it took 7 episodes for a level jump, and then the next level jump was 7 episodes later. So we would be looking at another level jump in another 7 episodes if the pace is flat, straight growth. But if it's exponential, we'll see that number of episodes to get to a level start to decrease as we bring more and more people in. But we are getting to an exponential type of curve. And what will happen is another group of people will come in to join our group, and it'll just blow up to another level, which may not be linear. We might get up to level
Right.
5 or
Yeah.
6 based on, hey, we heard about it. We told this person, we told that person. Suddenly,
And
150
and
people
and
show up.
that could be. I want to raise my hand on this, but that could be an order of magnitude. Correct? Is that right?
That is how we get up to the
Yeah.
next order. Yes, is we get up in order by having enough people that a third order group can include 4 or 5 second order groups working on components of a problem that come all together. I think that by the time we get up to the 5th order, we will have what can be called community with enough people of varying interests that everybody won't be able to know everybody else within the group.
Just for the record, so that's in the order of 34 to 60 something, correct?
No, that has to do with the resets
Okay,
that will
no,
go
carry on.
back.
Sorry, I apologize for
That
interrupting.
will go back into the conversation with Doc episode, but it takes a lot more folks to kick it up once it's going. And I haven't been paying attention to Dawn, and she's been running on and doing good stuff.
No, yeah, she's helping us. Carry on.
Well, it
You might
is.
want to read her comments. Yeah, yeah.
It's the Fibonacci spiral studying itself in a way. Yes, it is a great number for a 3. By the time we got to episode 14 and we crossed the threshold of level 3, 72 points of value for the people at the episode, 514 total. And then yesterday we had 17 people at the meeting. That's 3 larger than we had in 14. And it was 100 worth of value for the recurrence of people coming to the room. So at this point, we're starting to get very, very large in our container. We're going to have to cut this into people who show up will be asked to go into either a back room or to watch and participate and come on later, or figure out how it is. Well, thank you, Don, because I think you're helping direct the conversation to really be applicable to other groups doing similar things so that we can quickly count the number of people present, take an approximation, and know that where groups stand and how many people they represent. And as groups get bigger and bigger, individual people are going to represent other humans, and we're going to have to find ways of signing off a proxy vote or something. Because as we get to developing things, we have to listen to the voices. Because if we ignore a voice that's right and come back later and find out it's right, the correction to get back to right is way more work than getting it right initially.
It's like the cost of economy.
Yeah. So there were 5 new people in yesterday's meeting, and I noticed that for the first time, we as a collective group ran into a big hiccup. And that when Chief Digby came, no, when Chief Phil came in, he didn't
Yeah.
have an idea of what he was walking into, started talking right away, and then when shut down, didn't know how to appropriately interact. So it was sort of it derailed what happened in the conversation for almost 10 minutes. And then he needed to go and signed off, and we managed to get the conversation back on track. But there are times when, for me, when I'm in a conversation and somebody pulls the conversation away from where it was going, that's just frustrating because you never quite bring it back to exactly where it was the previous time. And so often we miss things because somebody is talking in depth and they get cut off. And there's a difference between just rambling and really explaining a topic. And when
Yes.
people
Yes,
are
sir.
trying to explain something, we got to let them finish what they say so that it comes out. But sometimes it's hard. And I know as a moderator, because I've been a moderator many times, your moderation skills are really good most of the time. It's when somebody pops their hand up and the person's still trying to explain, and then the person whose hand is up gets a little antsy, and that's when it starts to go. But that's technique
Hoping you
and
have
learning.
hoping you have admonished me about this. I'm working on it, Doc. You know I'm a work in progress.
Oh,
I might as well get under
absolutely.
construction tattooed on my forehead or whatever, but yeah.
And it's pointing out to enable you to do it better, not necessarily because you've been doing it badly or wrong. Yeah,
Don, you humble me so much. Sorry, Doc. Go ahead, but Don, you humble me.
the idea of where we are now with 15 episodes and 614 total accumulated experience points leads me to think that where we've got more room to grow through this level, we can get up, we'll get up to 21 shortly. And from 21 to 34, what we'll have to start doing is figuring out what the next level is. But I kind of figure
Let me
that,
focus on 21 first, Doc. Don't
yeah,
rush me. Sorry.
when the start is near becomes the start just passed, we'll reset the level to third order, first level, and we'll start counting from there on another scheme. And that'll take us up to a count of 89 or 144 before we
Sure.
have to think about
On our way to
resetting them by
millions.
a level.
Yeah, on our way to millions.
Well, that's the thing. We're not on our way to millions.
No, I
We're on
know.
our
You
way
and
to
I
8
talked about. I'm
billion.
just putting it on the recording because this is for our cohort as well, right? They'll listen to
Right.
this, and yeah.
We're on our way to 8 billion by the current accumulation of number of human standards. But whether we can get 8 billion people into one conversation, that could be
We'll have
pretty
to do
difficult.
breakout rooms, and Marco's going to need 3 more Marcos, and so on and so forth. For the bookend of the recording, because I want to be cognizant of your time. So we've made it through episode 15, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Um, and I think that there's a lot of homework for anyone who wants to listen to this. Most of them might be our own cohort, but this will be obviously it's broadcast for posterity. And I don't want to like rush us, Doc. Like I have more time here, but I do think that we've kind of nailed the hour here.
Yeah, I want to go just a little bit longer because I want to point out some of the data that comes as a result of having done those
Hey, if I have
calculations.
extra doc time, please, yeah, lay it on me.
Okay. From that group of 15 episodes, we have 19 people out of 37 total that have been to more than one episode of The Start is Near. We have a total of 37 people who have made at least one appearance in The Start is Near, which means that there's 17 people who have appeared once in one of the episodes and have not come back. But 19, 17, that's over 50% retention. And people
Do I
coming
get a
back
pat
and
on the head? Sorry,
participating.
Doc. Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you get 20% retention in some groups these days. So I find it interesting that it was the same number at the end of the count of 15 that I had gotten that I had reached when I was doing my radio show in 2018 and 2019. And I was tracking the amount of people who were live guests on air for a program who could come back as recurring characters. And that was where I, as an individual, lost the capability of tracking it further. It became too complicated. 5 years later, what took 2 years now took a quarter, a quarter of a year. And so we've changed our time frame that much that we've almost done two condenses within the last 5 years. It's quite a world. Quite a world.
And I appreciate your presence, Doc. Thank you so much. But carry on.
Well, spooky action at a distance is one of Einstein's terms, and I don't think Einstein quite got it right. But again, conversation for another time. Hello, Neutrino. Good to have you in. Way more than 8 billion? I don't know. I think it's way less than 8 billion. I don't see as many humans on this planet as the census data tells us by their count. Oh, also, the other thing I wanted to point out about this group is that our age distribution is kind of skewed.
Yes, yeah,
That
yeah.
we have a lot of older people who have world experience and can share it. We don't have a lot of younger people that have enthusiasm and the ability to physically
I'm
do
working on that
things.
as quick as possible, Doc, but keep going, yeah.
Yeah, I know you're funning, Don. Um, as a whole, I think we're pretty much set here. I think that what the key is that for the second order group, starting with 5, 6, or 7 people, we reset the level to first level, second order, and go back to mapping on a 1, 1, 2, 3, 5 scale, which is way easier to handle than 5, 8, 13, 21, and 34. But when we hit 34 in the group, that'll set a reset to the third order for the entire group. And that reset to the third order will back us off to 21 as the first one in the sequence, so that 34, the size of the actual group, is the second one in the sequence, and we can count up to 2 to 3.
Yep.
I'm mixing some mathematics here because when I count the levels, third level, fourth level, fifth level, sixth level, those are not Fibonacci numbers, those are normal counting numbers. But if I tried to do it by jumping and calling the levels Fibonacci, I think I'd confuse things even more.
No, this is Doc. Honestly, I feel like we've bookended a solid. Like, take your time. I'm not rushing you, but in terms of palatable attention spans, I think
We
we're
both.
right on time consciousness. Yeah.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to know how many times they've been in a meeting, I'm going to write this all up in a summary, and I can use first names, I think,
Yep.
to
I think
just
that's
list
comfortable. Yep.
the people, but I want to be cognitive of people's privacy. Um, can other people join our group? Can you tell them how to get there on a Friday?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Jamin and Marco are okay with that, or they're amicable to that. Yep, absolutely. So
Okay.
when we post this, Doc, I'll put links. I'll put links in the chat, and yeah. And Don, you're so amazing. Sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
No, that's a great thought that maybe we shouldn't count people who have passed off our earth as having passed off our earth because they are still alive here somewhere in the energy continuum.
Oh, Don, you're amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Doc. I don't know if you want to have parting thoughts in the last like 8 minutes or something here, but I feel like the hour and 15 is probably pretty, or an hour and 10 is pretty good. And then we can talk afterwards, obviously, but yeah.
I think that we can be done now. Why don't you close us off?
Well, you know how I end it. Strength on the journey, turning well. I don't want to be abrupt, but we can talk more. And Don, you are absolutely invited. It's Neutrino as well. When you go back and listen to this, I would really appreciate your presence in the future. Yeah, I'll do a debrief with you afterwards, Doc. Uh, how do I leave us here? Obviously, not obviously, but our cohort will. I think this was such an see. We have two parts to this. This is part one, but I think that Doc, you have done just an exemplary job of being a scholar and a gentleman. And when our cohort listens to this, obviously they'll see my smiles and stuff. But I think that this was a necessary conversation, especially as we grow forward together, because yeah, I think that your knowledge, I mean, you humble me, but I think that your knowledge, passing the baton kind of style, right? I'm stuck in the middle. I'm 35, and when we introduced NE and AP and so on and so forth. But yeah, I just want to express my gratitude, Doc. And yeah, this is right on time consciousness.
All right. So, for the new way, thank you all for coming and listening. Thank you for being here, Mike. Strength on the journey well, if that's what we normally say. And it's been a pleasure to be here with all of you. Take care.
Strength in the journey well, Doc.